Hello, this is Mary Lee Zenos, and this is my presentation on Google Forms and how it aligns to InTask. I selected Google Forms because of its versatility as an assessment tool. It allows you to create your own questions or surveys and then receive the results. It's really easy to use and I think underrated as a tool for both formative and summative assessments. I used it in the past for app requests from students, and then I admittedly forgot about it until recently when it was brought up in our course assessment wiki, and then I immediately began using it again as a reflection tool for my students, which I'll discuss later. So here's how Google Forms works. It's really simple and easy to use. You begin by pressing Create, and then select Form, and then this creates a new blank form for you to use. You can select if you want identifying information of your students or whoever's going to be using it to appear. And then you type your title. In this case, I'm going to make mine Self-Reflection for Math. And I do want a short description for my students to read to be sure that they know what to do. So for this particular reflection form I use with my students, I want it to say, give yourself a rating for how you did during today's rounds in math. And then I'm going to give them the scale. 4 is excellent and 1 needs major improvement. And my students use this scale on a daily basis and they're very familiar with their meanings, so they're going to understand what they need to do with that. So I start by clicking the edit button. Actually for the first question it already has a sample one for you started, so if you want to change the type of question you can hit edit. My first question is going to be more of a statement. This is my reflection for the, and then I'm going to have a list here, and it's going to be for the first round of math centers, the second round, the third round, and the fourth round. We have 4 rounds of math rotations. And then I do want it to be a required question, and then I click done. And my question is ready to go with a drop-down menu, and I can still go back and edit if I need to. So next I'm going to add an item, and then the next 4 questions are going to be simply ratings on the 1 to 4 scale. So I am going to want to select scale for my question type. And these are our typical behavior expectations for independent work, which corresponds with terminology from the Daily 5. And these aspects are getting started right away, and I'm going to have it a required question as well, and then staying in one spot, working the whole time, quiet voices, working on building stamina. All of these areas specifically address report card standards for my school's report card, and then also behaviors that we talk about very, very often in my classroom. So I'm going to repeat the scale, the same question for each one, moving the bar from 1 to 4 and repeating all these steps for each area of the reflection. All right. Now, while I do want to mark here that I want that to prove that they're being independent. Okay, so when exploring Google Forms further this week and thinking about what I could do, I also saw that there is a grid option that I could choose if I wanted to, instead of doing them each separate the way I just did. And if I would like to, I could type each one of the rows in a grid to be the different behaviors I was just talking about. And again, it doesn't have to be behaviors, it could be whatever you're assessing with your students. And I could make them show up in a grid so that they're not all separate like they were above. So here I'm going to have the different behaviors, and then I'm going to have the 1 through 4 scale. I have a couple other behaviors here that I forgot. And this is just to show you what it's going to look like. I'm actually going to delete this question when I'm done, but so this is just one other option that Google Forms gives you to format a question. So let's see what that looks like. So you can see it's the same idea, it just puts all of the questions into a grid form. All right, so then when I'm done, nice thing, it auto saves it for me. I am going to have another question here, which is going to be, did you show self-control? This is a topic that my class and I refer to throughout the days, and so it's monitored by me and the students themselves, and it helps them to be accountable for their choices and also to know when they need to work harder on having self-control. So I use a drop-down menu or the choose from a list for this, since the answer is either yes or no. And then my last question I want to do is going to be an open-ended free-form box that asks students to reflect on what they could improve, and then they can type in an answer if they choose. And I'm not making that a required question. All right, so then when I'm done, I can press send form. And when I want to see students' responses, I can click view responses. But first, let's change the theme and make it something a little bit more interesting. That's one of the fun things about Google Forms. So let's see. This is for math, so this kind of reminds me of a math game, so I like that one. And this just gives me a preview of what my finished survey is going to look like. And I like what I see. So, all right. I'm going to the live form, and this shows me again exactly what it's going to look like, and now I can practice if I want. Here's what it's going to look like to select some different choices as a student. Just like to check and confirm that it works. What I could improve, I could try to focus on my work instead of chatting with a neighbor. And students really do, they have been telling me the truth in some things that they reflect on themselves. So that's that, and that's the screen they get when they're done. And then when I want to see their responses, I press view responses, and the first time it does ask you if you want to create a new spreadsheet. So I do, and right now it just shows in columns the results, and since I'm the only one who's responded, that's all I see. But it starts to give you all the data just lined right up in those columns, so it's easy to look at, and you also can see the name of who submitted things. So that's all. So why is Google Form of value? Well, it really does allow me to quickly and easily get a snapshot of how my students are doing, specifically in the format of a self-reflection. Normally I had my students do their self-reflections on paper after each round or rotation of math stations, and then again after each round of center rotations during the literacy block. And I like doing these types of self-reflections for accountability purposes, but also for goal setting with my students, as sometimes they need specific target areas to think about when it comes to practicing productive behaviors. The Google Form tool itself is valuable for my own class because they can access it immediately with their iPads and the information goes directly to me. I can also then check out the results quickly and see what area my students need most improvement or instruction in, or in which area or which behavior they think they're doing well in, but that I'm not seeing proof of during class. I just find it helpful to use as an evaluation tool. It's easy to use and easy to project onto the big screen to analyze results and areas to work on as a class. And I don't have to show the column that has students' names on it. So some pros and cons. One of the pros to using Google Forms is that students can access it quickly and easily through a link. It has a clean format and themes to choose for personalization. For my class, I just paste the links into a Google Doc and put it into Google Drive in a folder I've titled Student Access. And as the name suggests, all students have access to this folder and can grab assignments and video instructions I've posted for the literacy block or math block. And the fact that the Google form can be accessed in the same location without having to go to a different site or app makes it extra convenient for me. I haven't really noticed any cons that would keep me from utilizing Google Forms at this point, and students have shared that it's easy to use as well. I suppose in my case, my only con would be that I would like to respond to individual students about how they've assessed themselves, but there's no way at this time that I know of for me to do that. I can't really give them feedback unless it's in person. All right, so do I recommend Google Drive to others? I would recommend using Google Forms as a quick exit slip for my class. You can create open-ended questions assessments with it too, and all of the responses gather in one place for you to check. And I think it makes a great venue for self-reflections or quick checks. Teachers could use it to ask content-specific questions and get responses in one place to check, or to ask reflection questions like I've tried. In the past, I've also used it as an app request form. In that case, students would access the link on my website, fill out the online form to tell me the name of an app they would like to get permission to download, describe the app, tell me why they want it, and so on. And then I would look at the requests and approve or not the apps that they requested and post the app names onto a growing list on my website. And I can organize my results in Google Forms, which also helps make it beneficial to use. So how does it help improve student learning? When I use Google Forms as a daily self-reflection form, I find that it helps student learning by giving students a focus for knowing and practicing the behaviors that support productivity. Many times students don't realize that that it's their own choices that have the greatest effect on learning and progress. We use the information from these self-reflections, my observations, and our morning meeting discussions to gain clear understanding of behaviors that support positive learning environments and being productive. And the forms themselves help students to acknowledge personal strengths and areas needing improvement. So the self-reflections I created on Google Forms help me to know what areas I should designate as focus topics for my students on a weekly basis. So that really helps inform my instruction. For example, when looking at the data generated by Google Form respondents, if I see that many students have been struggling with getting started right away, I know that that might be something I need to make a more cognizant effort to help support at the beginning of each round or rotation of math or reading. The forms also help give me an idea of students who have inflated or deflated senses of self-reflection and how I can help those students to better analyze their own behaviors in a more accurate way. And while I have not yet personally used Google Forms for content area assessments, I do believe it would provide a beneficial venue for both closed and open response test items, and teachers could view student responses at a glance to help inform next steps for instruction or review. This final slide just shows the alignment to the InTask standard number 6. Google Forms does align to it in the first part of the standard for formative and summative assessments. It is definitely a tool you could use to monitor student learning and create final exams or different types of response test items. It also allows teachers to design, adapt, select appropriate assessments to address learning goals. Results can be anonymous too if you want, so that might be able to help you if you want that to minimize your bias. It helps to support, verify, and document learning. You can use the response view to support your instructional decisions and document progress or behaviors that students make based on their responses. It can match learning objectives if it's up to the teacher. You have to be the one to create questions that match those learning objectives, but this does provide you a venue to do that. And then finally, it can engage learners. It can hold students accountable. It's private responses between student and teacher, so that can help motivate too. And it allows students' voices to be heard, depending on what you use it for. I think it could be really valuable for that. So that's all. Thanks so much.